This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Giovanna Silvestre. How you doing
Yes,
tonight?
hello. I'm good. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we love to talk to people from around the world. We've been doing that since like 2016, and I'm just thankful that we have you on the show. We do have your URL there. People don't have to. I won't have to repeat the length of it, but that will be fully clickable in the description of the podcast. Right now, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you go to those channels after the podcast is over, you'll be able to click through on that. That's just for anybody watching if they wanted to know how to do that, so they won't have to remember. So, so there it is. The other thing we're going to talk about today is like the central theme of what we're going to talk about in this episode is the art of letting go, techniques to find your inner peace. But before we get to that, I'm going to ask a question I always ask of any guest on the show: is what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
This might sound a little silly, but like life motivates me. I am very curious about life. And I've always had this like ever since I was a little girl. I would always ask why? Why? Why?
Mhm.
And I've just always been very curious about life. You know?
Okay.
So I would say just the unfolding of it and how it unfolds is really it's motivating and interesting to me.
Well, that's cool to be have that kind of spark. I think that's the kind of creativity that a lot of people have that we were kind of talking about earlier in the green room. But like what you're an author, so my focus on maybe on the first thing that well, what made you want to write? 'Cause some people are like they need a permission structure to be able to write. Like what made you feel like you wanted to tell your story through writing?
Well, in my late 20s, I went through a really deep depression where I kind of decided if I can't get myself to feel better, I'm going to end my life because life isn't worth living if I'm feeling this way. And it got to such a bad point where it's like I was in a mental prison that I couldn't get out of. And I even thought to myself, if I was actually in a physical prison, but I was mentally free, that would feel better than being in a mental prison and being like physically free, but having that mental prison. So I was like, I have to figure this out. And so I went on this like journey and I figured it out. I got out of a depression and then I'm like, okay, let's see how good life can get. I reprogrammed my brain. I reprogrammed the way I looked at things and did things and thought about things. And it was just kind of like, okay, let's see where we can go with this. And I started a yoga wear line because yoga at the time was really helping me. And it was at a time when nobody was making yoga wear. It was just like Lululemon, and Lululemon was really niche. And so I started a leggings line inspired by healing crystals, and it took off, and I was selling thousands of them all over the world. And then I was like, I want to write a book. One day I was like in my car and I was driving to my parents' house and I just had this like lightning bolt hit me and it was like, you have to write a book and talk about your experiences and share this. Because I'm coming from a place, I'm like not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a girl that just like, I'm just, a very relatable girl, American girl. And I figured it out on my own. And I wanted to help other people be able to do that, like be able to be your own guru.
Yeah, your own advocate. That's kind of like I think a lot of times when I talk to singer songwriters or writers, what they want to be able to do is like they know they've got this story, and they figure if they put it out there, it's going to resonate because everybody probably feels the way they feel.
Exactly.
And a lot of times when you're a writer, like you're pulling out a lot of things like the looking glass self, that like the deep self. You're pulling out things that might be vulnerable, that might
Yes.
be hard to do,
And
and then
embarrassing.
yeah, it's embarrassing. It's hard.
Like things that are embarrassing to admit or talk about, or even I think with women too, like even sometimes like what happens, we're getting better at sharing, but like what happens to us in the working world or, even dating. And we feel like kind of shameful, like we did something or something's wrong with us. But once we start talking about it and sharing our experiences with other women, we realize like, oh, this is just things that happen.
It's a common theme that
Yeah,
you
it's
find.
a common.
You're not the only one that's run into this issue.
Yeah, it's like there's not something inherently wrong with me. And I think also society, less now, but definitely like 15 years ago, it's very like image based.
Oh, it's
Like,
still like heavy image based.
still very image based, but like a little less, but I still feel it was like, okay, what school are you going to?
Oh,
And,
that kind of way. Yeah.
who
Before
are you
social
getting
media,
married to and what's
yeah,
your career? And you have to like put yourself in this box. I'm the career girl.
the
I'm
box.
the family girl. I'm the, and I mean, I'm a girl, so I'm talking about it like that, but I mean, it's for men as well.
Well,
It's
there's a box. Everybody gets put in a box because like your family, right? And then your kind of overall society. And I kind of talk about in sociological terms because like I studied some sociology in college. As a microcosm is like your family, right?
Yes.
So you could have generational kind of thing that puts you in a box because that's what you
Oh,
should always go to
absolutely.
college. You should maybe be a doctor, maybe be a lawyer, maybe be an accountant. That's the standard. Like you say, you want to be an artist and be like, what?
I know.
Like, no,
I
no,
think
no, you can't do that.
I'm from an Italian family. So, well, Italian Irish. My dad's from Italy, the south of Italy, and my mom is Irish. And so we're like super Catholic. And I, went to private Catholic school my entire life. And it was just kind of like I had like really weird things around sex because it was like, you don't do that before marriage.
Yeah, you got a lot of rules. You got
Yeah,
a
a
lot of
lot of
rules.
rules, like a lot of guilt, and then
Shame and guilt, controlling.
yeah, and then it's also like, well, of course I'm gonna get married and have children. Like that's just what you do, you
It's a
know?
standard path. But
It
there's
was
a
just
standard path, and then the problem is when you tend to be like a little more adventurous in terms of like you want to break out of the box,
yeah.
right? And he's like, I want to be an author, right? I want to be an actor. I want to be a painter. Then suddenly, well, you want to do something that's not in that normal path, right? Then people start looking at it like, whoa, you're weird. You're this, you're that. And then you got to deal with it in terms of that same kind of shame kind of structure. Because the people like if you don't do what is expected, it's kind of like we're very tribal. It goes back a long time. And then you
Yes.
feel like you're gonna get thrown out of the tribe.
Yeah, like
You get
shamed,
thrown out,
you know?
yeah,
Okay,
and then the wolf's at the door. Like if you get
okay,
thrown out of the tribe, it's not safe.
I gotta tell you this. This is so funny. So I went to USC and then I worked in the film industry. Like I was Kenneth Branagh's assistant when he directed Thor.
Oh, cool.
So I worked for Marvel Studios for a bit. And so I was like, super young or in my early 20s, and I'm like hanging out with celebs, and I'm just like, I'm so cool. I'm so cool. As a few years go by, I went into this depression. I was like, I am so unhappy. I got to change my life. So, I quit my job. I'm unemployed. And then I started my Confused Girl blog. And then I wanted to start a yoga wear line, like I was telling you about. So I didn't have any money. So I'm like, how do I start this? So I got a job as a part-time job as an Uber brand ambassador in Los Angeles, right? And my friend worked at Uber, and they were making so much money because what they would do is you would stand there all day long at the gas station. You would go up to drivers and say, hey, if you sign up to be an Uber brand ambassador or an Uber driver today, you are going to get a $50 gift card, like Visa
Oh,
card,
wow.
and I'm going to get $50. And they would never even have to drive. They would just have to sign up to be
Just sign it to get it.
a driver, right? So I was making like anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a day doing this. And this is actually what helped me start my yoga wear line. But I was so embarrassed to do it in Los Angeles that I would drive an hour to Orange County
Do it there. They didn't want people seeing you do that.
I was like, I don't, because I worked in the entertainment industry for
Oh,
like
so you didn't want them to see you
years.
doing that
Yeah,
job.
I was like, I'm gonna be so humiliated if somebody comes by in their car and I'm
You
like,
know,
they see me going up to people asking them to be an Uber driver. I was like, I'm gonna be so humiliated, because again, that's that
yeah.
image thing.
But the image thing is like as a musician too, we always get, sometimes you have to work, the starving artist mover job.
Yeah.
But or you gotta work as an Uber driver to pay for the gig, so you can pay for the Iconoline band, so you can get to Boston. It's
I know.
so it's like it's some places like, but there's if you're an indie artist, it's kind of underground. It's like that's a badge of honor. But if you had been at a different level, then I can see what you're saying. It's like you were at this level, you worked on Thor, and people
Yeah.
see you do that now,
I'm
like
like,
maybe on the way up, that's okay. But like if they'd seen you already there, then there's some issues because of the shame
I
kind of.
went backwards.
Yeah, that's the
I
problem.
I had to go, like, I went, and that was a choice. I knew that, and I knew it was temporary, but I was like, I know I was, like, here in, like, the career world, and now I'm, like, here.
That can happen. I mean, there's ebbs and flows. Now
Well, and
everybody can, but people don't like to understand it.
yeah, well, and the thing is I like sharing that story, because I'm so proud of actually what I did now. I'm like, "Oh my god, you had balls, girl." You know what I mean?
hmm
You had some hustle. So I like sharing that story now. I'm proud of that. But I also like sharing that story because I think it's good for people to know that you sometimes you have to go backwards to
hmm
be propelled further.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it happens a lot in the arts because sometimes, like, there's all these stories. Like there's the guy I like a lot is like Alex Chilton. He was in the band called the Box Tops, sang
Okay.
this song called "The Letter." You probably ever heard it on the FM radio, right? Like age 17, 18, he was big, like with this song. Then he left the Box Tops because they kind of like this, blue-eyed soul type of band.
Yeah.
And then he went and created a famous band called Big Star. Big Star was like a copy of the Beatles.
Oh, whoa.
But he was on this record label called Stax, which is the same label that Otis Redding was on. Problem is, it's kind of a mismatch. It's like a label that does stuff like Otis Redding didn't really know how to market a band that sounds like the Beatles.
Um,
So he went from being this big star with when he was with the Box Tops, The Letter is still a big hit to this day. You hear it all the time.
yeah.
Um, Suddenly, like that hit the albums he did for Big Star got really good ratings. Rolling Stone gave him like 5-star ratings, but they didn't sell. The only people that listened to him were other producers like Billy Corgan, all these famous people. A lot of the people from the '90s
Uh-huh.
actually loved that band, but they never made any money. So he went from being big at 17. By the time he's 23, he's like down.
Right?
He
Yeah.
didn't get big again until he's like in his 40s, where people found because Billy Corgan and then people from all these other bands from the '90s started name checking him in songs. Started like Paul Westerberg from the Replacements actually name checked him, saying, "Oh, there's a song called Alex Chilton," and actually name checked him. And then he got famous again. And he brought the band back, and they started touring.
Oh,
So
that's
he came back like at age 45, 50.
I think, like, it's so cliche and like cheesy now to say like it's about the journey, not the destination. But if you don't get that, you're going to be miserable. Because if it's always about like what the ending,
Yeah.
you're never going to be satisfied with anything. And there's so much joy that just life, there's so much joy within life.
Well, you got to
Like,
go through it. Like, it's
yeah,
like the drafts of your book, right? Right.
yeah,
Like if you're an artist, right? Like I got like 100 demos before, sometimes 30 songs before I get the song that actually is the song.
yeah,
Nobody usually sees my scraps like that, right? But you got to go through it. Now you could look at it as like, well, you did 30 versions of the song. Are you wasting time? No, it's a process.
it's a process.
Like if you're an author, like your first 2 books might not work, right? First book could have worked, and then the third book doesn't, and then the seventh book works. It's like you
Wow.
don't know, but like, do you stop or do you keep on like been a work like effort.
Really. And
Like
and
if you just
and
show
then
up and keep on working.
exactly, but then here's the thing, right? If it's all about, the ending, the successful ending, if it's all about that, then if it doesn't hit the way you want it to hit, then you're going to be down, you're going to fall into a depression.
Give up.
I mean, you know what I mean? It could get really bad. But if you enjoy the process and you've learned from the process and you're open to what's next,
Yeah.
there's infinite possibilities for you, and it could go bigger than what you thought. Like, I have the craziest story with this book. Like, it's really insane. I don't know. Should I get into that now or?
Yeah, yeah. Because you're telling us
Yeah.
how the story. There's sometimes like, I think what you were saying is like you have to do it because you love it. Like I'm a musician because I love it, not because I want to be in the top 10. Now, if I end up in the top 10, that's cool. But I'm gonna keep on playing until I'm like not can't play because
Yeah,
I like to
exactly.
play.
Because it's the way you express joy within your existence. And if you're not having some kind of joy and fun here on earth, you're not doing it right. If everything is about superficial end, you're going to be constantly dissatisfied, unhappy, and like depressed. You got to find a way to figure out things you love in this world and do that, you know? So, okay, so I'm going to tell you about this. This is a really cool story, the book. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do the writing of this book differently than I've done everything else in my life, because I'm a little bit of like a bulldozer, go, 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 push things through, control, And I was like, I'm not going to do that with this book. I was like, I'm going to organize my company, which is the activewear line, to be remote so I can move to Bali. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're eat, pray, love," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm eat, pray, love."
You can be anywhere.
But Bali, amazing food. I could do yoga every day. I could live cheaply, and it's a super spiritual, relaxed place. And I don't have to worry so much about like making ends meet because it's so inexpensive.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to move to Indonesia and I'm going to write the book there. And then if there's one day I want to write a lot, I'll write a lot. If there's a day where I'm like, I'm not feeling it, it's not coming to me, I'm not going to force myself.
Not gonna stress about it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not going to like be like, we are working from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and we're going to sit
So
here.
you didn't have an end date, right? For it, you were just kind of open ended. It's gonna be done when it's done.
Yeah. I was just like, there is not going to be, I'm going to do this in joy. And I'd never written a book before, like, of course, I'm the type of person that's like, I'm going to go write a book. Like, like I was a business student, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
it's a little different.
yeah, yeah. And so, but I would sit there and I would wait until something hit me and then I would start writing. And then when that joy thing happened that happens to artists, where
Mhm.
you're like, your body gets filled with this like excited, joyful energy.
Yeah,
And
stream of consciousness, like in your muse hit you. Like the
yes,
muse hits you, and then you get the stream of consciousness. You're in the flow state, what they call
yes,
flow state. Yeah.
yes. And then it was just like, zzz, like coming out of my fingers. And then I would remember these stories. And then I would have just like these dots connecting on what to say. And it was like the most beautiful feeling. But it only lasts for like maybe like a couple hours if you're lucky,
Yeah.
because then you get
It's
tired.
not always on. It's not. It's like sometimes it's on, sometimes it's not.
Exactly. And so then like if I would get tired and I'm like, okay, that was really joyful. Now I'm going to stop and, wait until it hits me again. And that's how I wrote this book. And it was funny because my parents came to Indonesia to visit me. And I think they just thought I became like a random airy fairy hippie girl because they're
You're
like,
in the
what is
place
she
for it. You're in the place
doing?
for it.
She's living in Bali doing yoga every day. Like,
Jack Kerouac on the road. You're already just out there.
yeah, exactly. So, I also, of course, want to make my parents happy and impress them, especially because my dad is like an immigrant and immigrant children have that extra added, you got to prove yourself kind of
Yeah, that
thing.
drive. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had to go through that too. Like, you know, they feel this way about me, but that's okay. I know what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm doing, and this is in my soul to do, and I have to do it. So if people think I'm dumb right now, I don't care.
Well, that's the way I think the heart of an artist is like you have to not. The problem is a lot of times when you choose to do art, when you're in it and when you do it, you when you put it out, people are gonna you can say they don't like it or they
Yeah.
don't like your process or they say it's the wrong process because there's all these critics that want to like push at what you're doing,
Yeah.
and then you have to kind of say, well, you know what? There's a law of attraction, and when I put it out here, the people who need it are gonna find it. Well, they don't want to hear that, but that's what happens.
No, it's so true. It's so true. Like even when I started my yoga wear line and I sent my leggings to the Nordstrom's. And the girl that got it, who wasn't the buyer, but she worked under the buyer at Nordstrom's. And she's like, oh my God, I love these yoga leggings. They're so cool. They're inspired. Like, it's so cool. They're inspired by healing crystals. I love this idea so much. So I was like, oh my God, my leggings are going to be in Nordstrom's. And like, this is so cool. And like, I was imagining myself walking through Nordstrom's, seeing my brand, you know? And then the main buyer of Nordstrom's emailed me and she's like, these are so ugly. She's like, this is not a Nordstrom's product. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she was so mean. Like she could have just said this isn't for us or whatever, but she had to throw in these are so ugly.
Yeah,
And I got really defeated at first. And then I was like, you know what? This is one lady's opinion. And maybe she's going through a divorce.
yeah.
Maybe she's having a bad day. You know, like maybe this has nothing to do with me. And I just caught her in the wrong moment, you know?
Mhm.
So I was like, I remembered, you know, all the other women that bought my product and loved it. And I was like, I'll concentrate on them.
Yeah, that's all you gotta do. 'Cause I mean, you just take it as a feedback loop. There's always somebody, when Dylan was around, everybody said, "Well, you can't have a voice like that." Right?
Of course.
Columbia Records, they look at him and it's like, "You can't have a voice like that and be on the radio." And then suddenly they started looking at his lyrics. And said, "Well, his lyrics are, like, amazing." And
Yeah.
then there were some producers saying, "We gotta give this guy a shot because his writing is, like, off the chart."
Yeah.
And then maybe there'll be people and the back then, the big deal people in the industry are like, "Well, maybe I don't get it. Maybe there's a market, let's try it."
But you know what? And you know what? It's like you have to stay in the game long enough to find that one person that believes in you. And like there's more to this book story. This book story is just like long and little and crazy and amazing. But
Mhm.
it's like a lot of people they want to recreate the wheel
Yeah, they wanna take what's already hitting.
already
'Cause look,
there.
there's, like, all
Change
these
it.
products are on the shelf, and they want you to be the same. It's like, why would anybody
Exactly.
buy the same thing that's already here? Like, they're probably gonna want something that's a little different, but that's always hard sell because 'cause they're
Always
like to take
sell.
just the risk of putting that different thing out there. "Well, we don't know about this. I don't have any numbers on this." And so that's always it's like you gotta take somebody that's willing to say, "Whoa, like, I don't have numbers on this, but I got a feel on this."
Yeah.
So can you get those people with the feel? Talk
Yeah.
to you.
And it takes a while and it takes a lot of rejection. So it's like you have to I know it hurts and it's painful and everything, but you got to stick with it. Like so for instance, so when I came back to California, it was during COVID and I had written my book, I had a book proposal, and so I went out and I found an agent, right? And a really good like literary agent. And she had and I was just like, yes, this is amazing. Like, it was like confirmation that I followed my heart and that was the right thing to do.
Mhm.
So she had it for 2.5 years, my book proposal. Rejection, rejection, rejection. To a point where I was like, maybe I I reached a little too high on this one. Maybe I was a little bit out of my depth on this one. Like I questioned that, and not in an insecure way, but in a very rational way, you know? And I
Mhm.
was like, because I haven't, people were like interested, but then it was always no. And so I was like, okay, you know what? It was about to turn 2023, the new year. And I said 2 weeks after the new year, I'm going to take my book proposal back from her. And then I'm going to work on self-publishing.
Mhm.
So right after 2023, it was like a day or two later, I get an email from her that says, great way to start the new year. This publishing company is really interested in your book.
Finally got one. Yeah.
And then the craziest thing, they were so interested, and then another publishing company came in because it's that whole, "Ooh, somebody wants it, so I want it now."
Yeah. As soon
And
as
they
somebody wants it, then somebody else wants it.
exactly. And then they doubled the offer of the first publishing company. So
Kind
I
of
was
like
like,
the
"Okay,
job
I'm gonna go
market.
with them, obviously." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
well, yeah, it's like I'm an IT consultant and like I have a certain skill set for software.
yeah,
And then suddenly sometimes there's a drought and then suddenly everybody needs what I know how to do. So I'll get 3 or 4 places trying to pitch me. First one comes with a low bid, next one comes with another one, there's a third one. Then I got them bidding against each other because that's what you got to do,
yeah,
because but sometimes it's like there can be a little bit of a famine or a drought
yes.
and then suddenly
And
boom,
then
it
all
pops
the
up.
exactly, and so you like during the famine, you gotta keep the faith. I swear the universe tests us to see how strong we are with this, you know? And the craziest thing was both publishing companies were like, usually when we get, self-help books, memoirs, um, they're usually just a copy of another self-help book.
Or just
And
a
they
clone of a
a
structure.
clone. Yeah, they change it up a little bit, but they said this is so original and we've never heard that confusion is a virtue because that's the premise of my book, that
Mm.
confusion is actually a virtue. So there's no need to hate on it and be scared of it, like because confusion leads you to discovery. Without it, you don't discover anything. And so both of them are telling me this is so amazing. We've never heard of a book that talks about how confusion is a virtue. And I'm like, where were y'all too this last 2.5 years? Now everybody's telling me I'm a genius for having this like idea. And I'm like, my brand has been saying this for the last 10 years.
Well, it's like you said, a lot of people like to see the same clone. It's like in the music industry, you got there's like 10 producers. Everybody goes to the same guys, and then everybody sound kind of in the same zone. And
Yes.
then when you get somebody that blast out of it, then you get the Hendrix, you get the
Yeah.
Prince, you get the Kurt
Yes.
Cobain. But most of the time, people aren't doing that. Most of the time, they're just trying to stay in the
Copy.
same thing until you get this guy as an outlier, the outliers. But then suddenly there'll be 10 million copies of the outlier
Yeah.
because everybody says they don't like it
Yeah.
until it actually works. And like they seem to always forget. It's like it's always the new idea. Like Orson Welles, he had the new idea when he
Yeah.
did Citizen Kane. It
Yeah.
wasn't like anything else.
Yeah, and sometimes, like and even if you have, like, the new, original I wasn't thinking, like me saying confusion is a virtue. I wasn't saying that because I wanted to be an outlier or because I was trying to be weird or different. I was saying it because I believed it
Well,
and
you had
because
lived it. Yeah,
and I
you lived.
lived it,
Yeah.
and I discovered that. Um, and I also saw how like in the beginning, and like when I was so depressed, I was so ashamed of myself that I didn't, have all the answers. I didn't know what I wanted to do anymore. And I had this shame. And I can see other people have that too, especially the ones where they act like they know everything and need to be right all the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know, it's not a shameful thing to be confused. It's an inevitable part of life, and you will experience it through different aspects of your life. Like, when you have kids, you're like, how do I freaking
Well, how do you
parent?
do that? Yeah, you don't know. I mean, you have to learn. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people want people to be like 0 to 100. A lot of times you find jobs, everybody like you gotta have all these acronyms and all these certifications. It's like, I've read something with some economics, like business persons, like almost everybody could learn all the jobs, right? Like almost every human being could actually learn the job. But you want somebody that goes in, you don't want to have to spend any effort training. You don't
Yes.
want to have to spend any effort. Maybe listen to somebody has a different idea. You
Yeah.
want them to just come on and just fit in like a cog in the machine.
Yes. A
And
cog in the machine, a cog in
what
the wheel.
but it's like what they find is like you really need like the Steve Jobs.
Uh-huh.
You need the guy that's going to come up and say, why can't we do an iPhone? And Microsoft looked at it and said, why would you do a phone? There's already companies doing phones. It's like, because we're going to do it like this. And it's like, so like these outlier guys, people, they come up with the idea and say, oh, no, that's no good. And then
Yeah.
they find out what it's always good.
Well,
They actually push it.
and in the hiring process, it's so funny. I am so unhireable. Like, I mean, it's been a while, like 2.5 years, where I'm like waiting to see if anything's going to happen with this book. And I'm, working on other things. But at COVID, I was like, okay, after COVID, I'm like, I need to find, a job, bring in some more income. Unhireable, totally unhireable, even though I have like great educational background and have all this experience in all these different things, wrote a book, started a business, worked in the entertainment industry for all these celebrities. No, because because I don't fit into anything specifically.
Yeah, they
And
want
so
niche.
yeah, so it's kind of like people are like, well, you're doing all these things, why would you even want a job? Like they think,
They think
you
you're
know
gonna leave to
I'm gonna
something.
leave,
Yeah, that's a
or
problem.
I'm too smart for this. And so I put myself in this unhireable position.
When you put yourself, you're in the kind of entrepreneurial zone, so they're not trusting that you're gonna stay
Yeah,
with them. So
exactly.
so
Exactly.
like if you feel like if you put yourself into that, you're a creative. And then if they're not looking for that, like you might have to find some startup that says, yeah, we need this kind of quirky person. Right.
Yeah. But
We
even
need
then, they don't, even then, I swear, like they don't want it. They
wow.
don't, I think because they don't want anybody that really like thinks for themselves too much. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? You have
top
to
down
kind of
type
be like
thinkers.
an obedient robot a little bit?
Yeah, those are the wrong place. You gotta find the ones where they're more open-minded. But yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of problems. There's a lot of people who just want to follow the algorithm kind of mindset, which is like is a killer. It's like it's numbing. Like
Yeah.
these algorithms that kind of weed everything out,
Oh
and
my
it's like
God.
they're so destructive to art
Oh,
because there's like it's like all the cat videos get through. Not that I mean I have a cat, but it's like if you're trying to do something different, then you get like no views, no likes. But you do that cat video with the same song everybody else does, then 100,000 views, 100,
yeah. It's
200,000,
almost like they're
500.
programming us to be like sheep that follow the herd kind of
You
thing.
got to follow that. What's the hottest thing? And they even tell you, use
Yeah.
these songs because these are the hot songs. Like, well, what if I want to use something that I like?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you shouldn't do that.
Oh, yeah. No, 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 no. Well, it's interesting because I've just never had that personality of following. Like I've always been and not I wasn't not following to be a rebel. You know those people that are like,
I'm ever like a little
I'm
silent
not a
pause.
follower, I'm a rebel? And I'm like, I'm not a rebel, but I just march to the beat of my own drum and I always have. And, you don't have to follow me, but if,
Well, I
you
think
wanna
if you want to speak your own mind, it kind of puts you on on the bleeding edge. If you have an original idea, you're not scared of it. Because so many people are like suffer from like imposter syndrome, or they suffer from they gotta just they're like comparison trap,
yes.
right?
I There's a whole chapter on my book about comparisons and imposter syndrome I talk about.
Yeah, it's a thing I hate. Like when I work with people as a producer, sometimes people will try to come to me and they might come to me like thinking that I'm gonna like something, so they'll cater it to what they think I'm gonna like. It's like, no, no, no. I don't want you to do that. I want to hear like the song that you're scared to show anybody because I
Yeah.
think that's probably closer to who you are, and that's what interests me. What interests me is not that you could sound like Taylor Swift or Beyonce or anybody else or Andy Lennox or I want to know what you sound like. I want
Yeah,
to know what you do, right? And what makes you different because that's what I can work with because that's your advantage.
it's your
When
advantage.
people don't believe that that's their advantage, then I have trouble.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's so true. It's like, and I say this in my book. There's nobody youer than you.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
true.
and that's your superpower.
Yeah, that's your
That's
secret sauce.
that's your secret sauce. And so it's like if you like, and it's not something you have to make yourself do. Because when you actually dig deep and get to know yourself better, you're authentic.
It just comes out.
And then it comes out.
Yeah,
Like it's not
it's like a
something
flow state would just happen more if you would get rid of the barrier or the wall that stops you from being yourself.
exactly.
That's why I find is like the closer I get to like I knew a lot of kids is well, I gotta sound like Jimmy Page or I gotta play like Bonham or I gotta play like this. And I was like there's already a Bonham. There's already Jimmy Page. Like you need to focus on what you can do. And I've always
Mhm.
come it's kind of like the punk aesthetic, right? The idea that you could be like Joey Ramone or you could be like the Sex Pistols or the Clash and you could just go out and we
Yeah,
have a voice like Joe Stummer and just be authentic, right? And
yeah,
he's not trying to be Freddie Mercury because he can't, because
yep,
Freddie Mercury is Freddie Mercury. But Joe Strummer has a unique voice as a punk rocker. He's like he's willing to just say, well, that's what it is. It's not
yeah,
perfect pitch. It's not in pitch at all. But that's the fact is that it was authentic and it was honest and it felt real.
yeah. And no one can ever and then within that, it's like you can't be copied. You can't and you're constantly I think when you're authentic and you're creating from that place, right? You're there's no kind of like drop off. You're constantly in an evolution with your stuff. It's always
Yeah,
changing
yeah.
and
You're just
evolving.
kind of
You don't
yeah.
have to, oh, let me think about the new next hot thing that's gonna like take. Because if you're evolving with your stuff, that all evolves too. And also whether something takes off or doesn't, you kind of don't care because you're enjoying the process.
But if you're there because you're like I like music and I want to be in music regardless. Now, if you're like there, like I gotta hit the top 10, I gotta sell 1,000,000 units, I gotta get on see this stage, right? Well, then like you're gonna hit things where you don't make it, where you don't hit those goals.
Yeah.
And then I knew a lot of guys like the guitar, they never picked up the guitar again, right? Because they didn't get past playing at the pizza place. And because if they couldn't get the gig in New York or get the gig in LA and they only playing in Springfield, Ohio or
Yeah.
Springfield, Mass. Like, well, then I didn't make it. Then the guitar just stays in the case. But if you care about, you just love picking up that guitar, then things will happen.
Yeah. And
Regardless, it might be a different level, but you just let it happen.
it's great. And there you go. Let it happen. I this is so this is one of the craziest lessons I learned through this whole creative process with the book because I decided to do it differently than me being a bulldozer and pushing through. I was like,
Mm.
I'm going to show up at this cafe with my computer, but I'm going to let the inspiration come. I'm not going to force it. I'm going to let it. I put myself in a serene environment. I did yoga every day. I showed up to my computer. I was ready. I was eating healthy, but it was like I let it happen. Then,
That's yeah.
you know, and then 2.5 years of rejection. And I gave the book space. I was like, okay, I wrote you, I did a book proposal. Now I got us an agent.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else for me to do right now.
You just
And
had to let it happen because eventually, because you were patient, that with law of attraction, if it found those agents that started to see, hey, this is unique. Where these other agents, it wasn't for them because they didn't want something unique. Because
exactly.
they were looking for a formula,
Mhm.
right? And so because you were patient and said, "Well, I have 6 months and I'm done. I'm pulling it," right? Then you would have made a mistake. It's like if I let it stay there, it actually found its audience.
Oh,
Yeah, which that's a lesson, that you
that
have to
is that is
that's a big
such a
lesson.
that's such a huge lesson because 'cause I'm not naturally patient. Like, I would say I am naturally very impatient, and I am naturally a person that's like, "Okay, if it's not gonna happen, I'm gonna make it happen," you know? And like I said in the beginning of this conversation, everything that's I did the opposite of what I would normally have done in the past with projects. I did this in an opposite way, because I felt like this was too special to,
Mhm.
like, hold on to too strongly, and it's almost like when you try to control something and hold on to it, you kill it.
Yeah, you blow it up. It's like a lot of
Yeah,
times I go as a musician, if I go and I do 100 takes of something, then I usually destroy the song. And
exactly.
usually the first 4 takes are like really it.
The best.
But but
Yeah.
then as I keep on doing it, and then I wreck the song, and then I realize that's why I kept the other versions because like, you know what? Version 4 is the best one. Version 102 is the worst. It's I would just go with 4 because and a lot of times we do that and we'll wreck stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, you
I
gotta
I
you gotta
love
do
thinking about it like this. If you see a beautiful flower and you fall in love with it, don't pick it up because the second you pick it up, it ceases to be the beautiful thing you fell in love with because it'll die.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like needing that control and I had to be real careful about that too. Like anytime I felt like I was going there with it, and I'm like, "No, no, we're not doing this with this. We're gonna give this space to breathe, to live," because things need space. Relationships need space, people need space, and our project and creative projects need space too.
Yeah, I think anxiety sometimes messes us up because
Yeah.
you get too much anxiety, and then you get the perfection trap. And I'm kind of like a big believer in the stream of consciousness flow state of happy accident.
Yep.
And a lot of times what happens there is like you start to trust yourself. So if you trust yourself, then the happy accident will happen. But if
Yes.
you don't trust yourself, then you will try to overplay think it. And that's what I always tell you, don't overthink it. And you'll see this
Well,
with athletes. Like you got your training, you know all the moves, but you
yeah.
kind of got to feel it. And not that you're not paying attention, but if you don't feel it, if you start overthinking it, you'll wreck it.
You're right, you have to be, like, super intuitive about it because I even at some point, I even started playing mental tricks on myself, and I was like, "Am I a person?" Like, I just created this in my head, "Am I a person that doesn't finish things?" And I was like because my book wasn't getting published, I was questioning my ability
To
to
finish it.
finish things when that's not true because how like, I was looking for a publisher. So that
Yeah,
was
not yeah, not finish it. That's not the same thing.
that's not the same thing, but I was twisting it up, in my mind and,
Mhm.
like, then trying to turn myself into a person that, like, doesn't finish things, and I'm like, "I finish everything." So, I'm being crazy right now, like, stop.
Well, yeah, the overthinking can be the over assessment. Like sometimes you can it's good to have a lesson learned, but don't get like totally hung up on it where you're just like second guessing, third guessing everything you did. It's like, well, okay, I can learn these key things and let's go to the next thing and keep it in the box, keep it in the background and say, well, if I see a pattern and like I could learn from it, but don't obsess. Well, I'm going to hit that same pattern. I'm going to mess up.
Yeah, and
And you
no,
don't want to do that.
yeah, and I really think a good way to keep yourself in like, when you are in that holding zone, when you've done everything you can do, and now you're waiting for it to happen, which I say it's letting go and just letting it happen. Because I look at life like a dance, and, like, I come to the dance floor, I know the moves, and I'm ready to, like, let's say, do the tango,
Hmm.
but I need my partner.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, and so I consider my partner like life, and it's like leading me through the dance, but I show up and I'm ready to do the dance. you
Well, you
know?
gotta have some, like, spirituality and intuition,
I
right?
think
To
so.
kinda live in that mode where otherwise you'd be like you're looking for, like, this other or this soulmate that to complete you when
Yeah,
it's like, okay, if you actually believe in your intuition, it's like you don't have to have that soulmate to complete you. That will be something that can someone that connects with you, but it
yeah.
doesn't necessarily complete you, but sometimes people are looking for this other to, like, complete
Complete
everything.
them. Well, and that yeah, and the thing is like, that never works out. That's
Yeah,
such
yeah,
that becomes a
usually don't
very
work.
that becomes a very painful existence when you want someone to save you from your own life, because at the end of the day, like, we all have to save ourselves. People can help us and come to our aid, but at the end of the day, we all have to save ourselves, which is a hard realization to come to
Mhm.
sometimes, but it's the truth. And I would just say, going back to like that waiting period where something's not happening and you're trying to still believe, but you're doubting yourself and questioning everything and twisting things like I was. I think a good technique for that is going back to the joy, like, and remembering like, "Oh, I was so joyful doing that. That was such, like, a nice thing to do in my life. I was so happy about." I'm happy that I did that, and I allowed myself to do that, and I created something, and then giving yourself a little grace for that,
Mhm.
and then say, "You know what? I'm gonna stop focusing on this outcome," because if you focus too much on the outcome, you're gonna give yourself anxiety
Yeah.
and, you know but then people are like, "Well, but don't you have to, like, have a goal, or because how can you manifest something, and we gotta have a vision board," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's all good. Do that. I do that too. But if you do that, you do the work, but then I think you gotta let it go.
Yeah, there's
Your
a
mind."
period where you have to have kind of, like, quiet your mind from the noise. Like, what I find is, like, a walk in the woods, you step away from something, because I might be in my studio writing something for, like, 8 hours, and then I
Yeah.
realize, like, diminishing returns. I probably should have left, like, 2 hours into it and probably gone for the walk, and then you say, "Okay, yeah, yeah." It's like, but then I might not even go back to what I was doing for 2 weeks to give myself time to, like, not obsess on it, because
Yeah.
sometimes if you could jump back on it, you'll wreck it. Sometimes you need to kinda, like, percolate and just be there, go back to it, and you give yourself some grace so you don't freak yourself out.
I know, because look at what I would have done. Let's say I after, like, the first year with the agent, if I would have just been like, "You know what? You haven't done anything. I'm pulling it. I'm gonna self-publish,"
Yeah,
or something. Oh my god, the amazingness that I mean, the fact that I'm a first-time writer, I got a way bigger advance than I could have ever imagined. I had 2 reputable publishing companies want my book. And then this all happened too 2 months before my father passed. So my dad knew that my book was gonna be published, which was a big deal for him because he was, like, an immigrant to this country,
wanted
and
to
he's
see
like
you do it.
and he didn't have an education. He was just super hardworking, and then made sure I got an education, and then his daughter's gonna be, like, a published author in the US. I mean, that was, like, a big deal for him, and I'm just like, what a beautiful because I let it happen, instead of, like, try to control it and get upset, and I just let it happen in its own time. It happened at the perfect time, like, with my father. It happened I got quite a bit of money for it, you know? And then the whole process of working on it with the publishing company has been incredible.
Well, it gave you like if you yeah, when you're it's like if you're working with a label and everybody say they don't like label, but there's something about having the process. Like say if you have an agent, you have the people, the editors, you have somebody who does the cover. It's just like the same thing music. If you got the recording engineers, you got your producer, you got the marketing team, got the people who design the cover or your record, design the cover of your book. This feels like okay, I'm actually in the process.
Yeah.
And it feels like, well, this is like legit.
Yes. Yeah, I know that's exactly what I said. I was like, I just met with, like, the PR and marketing team, and I'm like, "I have a team?" And then I was like, "I feel so legit." And they're
Yeah,
like, "You
yeah.
are legit." They're like, "Girl, you are."
It's cool if you could do that yourself, but then you're putting on a lot of hats, and sometimes, like, are you able to wear that hat? Like, I when you ask people, like, to try to run everything themselves,
Yeah.
are you the best at SEO? Are you the best at A&R? Are you the best at marketing? Are you the best? Probably not. You might be the best
No.
at writing a song or
Yeah,
writing a book, but you're
yeah,
probably not good at those other things. So
exactly.
then you're gonna maybe not make the right decisions.
Well, I and it's so it's th exactly, and that's why it's so cool to have a team, and I have to say, like, more than anything with this whole experience, I just have gratitude because, I know what it's like to have to do your own SEO, your own website, all your own designs, hustle, marketing, social media, taxes. I mean,
Yeah, there's a
you know what I
lot.
mean? It's like
There's a
everything on your own because you don't have any money, and you have like you're just starting out. So it was like I was working 24/7, and then now it's like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for, the graphic designer who designed the cover, the editor. I mean, there's so
yeah.
many people involved in this. It's crazy. It's like a village.
Well, I think what's cool about it is, like, as an artist, then potentially, like, if you wanna write another book, you got the space, that's, like, why I actually can create because I got a team. So I ain't
Yeah.
gotta worry about those things,
Mhm.
where a lot of times if you're, like, self-published or you know, um, out there as a self-published, like, musician, like, you gotta do everything. It's DIY, you know?
Yeah.
You get and it's like,
Yeah, yeah. Do it yourself.
it's all it's a lot of work, and so then you can't do as much art. You
Yep.
spend so much time on one piece of art, and you could do other pieces of art.
Yeah.
So, so then you can focus, or you can focus on actually being, like, not on as much on the business side and more on, like, the life side. Like, there's other things I wanna do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. No, and, again, so grateful, and then also, I already do have an idea for a second book, and, like, I'm, like, so excited to start working on that. But I'm going with the flow. I'm like, "Okay, it's not exactly the right moment right now because 'cause I'm concentrated with, like, promoting this and doing the things with this, but when the time comes, I know it'll be right, and I'm on it."
So, with the whole Hollywood connection, are you thinking of any way that this would get into any other media form?
Oh my god, I just love you, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I kind of wrote it with the intention of it kind of being a TV show, like a little series,
Mm, that'd be cool.
Confused Girl. I just think so many women will relate.
There's a lot of places that you can, now they have all these networks. It's not just the
Yeah,
free networks. You got all these, like, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. They got all these places that you could send all of them. There's so many different places that potentially you think you could get, and they seem to want a lot of content, you know?
exactly. Exactly. So, no, that is definitely here.
That's cool. 'Cause I'm
Yeah.
always into this idea of, you know, just taking things and trying to market, like, even our music, like sync licensing. Like, I've been writing a lot of music that kind of fits like video games. Just
Yeah.
like, I just write a lot of things that are like sound like themes to Nintendo or Sega games or something.
Uh-huh.
And it just was coming out that way. And then people are saying, you ought to start pitching it to these guys because they're looking for music soundtracks. And it happens to be that the soundtracks for video games actually pay better to musicians
And
than
you no, I isn't that
send,
I love
sending
it
it
when that
to other
happens, like
places.
no, I love it when that happens, it's like a whole new, like, avenue opens up, and the avenues only open up when you follow the dots, when you follow the breadcrumbs. I feel like the universe leaves you, like, little breadcrumbs, and then if you
Yeah.
follow that and you follow the joy, then it's like you're gonna eventually I do believe you'll get everything that you'll
Yeah.
probably
Well, sometimes you write
get
like
more. You'll get
you
more.
you went to Bali and you started writing a book that felt like you, right?
Yeah.
People, if you get and if you're a musician or a painter and you say, well, I'm going to do something that feels like my authentic self. and then you kind of go dive into it, and you say, well, it doesn't seem like there's a market, and then suddenly the market appears when you put it out there in the world. Like it does appear because
Yeah.
there are people actually are looking for exactly what you did.
Mhm.
You might not believe it, but they are.
Yeah, and you don't know until you try.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing about trying to, find that peace of mind through art. Like I've always felt that art is very cathartic, and I get my
Oh,
peace of
yeah.
mind by kind of working through it. And it seems like that's what you do too.
Yeah. No, definitely, and I do believe that we are all inherently creative because I think life is creative. Like, every time we step outside, we're creating our life,
Hmm.
and we get caught up into, like, the routine, so it just feels very robotic and boring and routine, but once you kind of realize that and, like, step out of that, do something a little bit different that day, it's like you are in constant creation.
Well, that's why I love talking to different people, kind of getting me a different perspective. And as a writer, the more people I meet, the more material I get into my subconscious because
Yeah.
I keep on getting these different points of view
Yeah,
from
yeah.
these different individuals I've interviewed, like yourself, and then that makes me think because it's like I'm
Mhm.
not just speaking what I think. I get to hear
Exactly.
what you have to say, right? And then you're giving me the experience of your life, and then we're relaying that to the audience through the podcast. And that's why I love the podcast form because we get to talk for at least an hour and
Yeah,
kind of dive deep into like who you are and why you do what you do.
yeah.
And then that the world gets to see, wow, that we're having this authentic discussion. It's not some infomercial.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I love that, and I was actually thinking that because I mean, I've done podcasts before, but it's been a while. So, I was thinking that when we were having our conversation, I was like, "This is so fun. I'm really enjoying this." Because also you never know what you're gonna say that might trigger something beautiful in somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like, the most powerful thing about the sharing.
But it's like jazz improvisation. Like if I'm with a band and we kind of have I might have a central theme. I kind of know something, but like I don't, somebody hits a different key or different chord, I might just figure out what goes with that,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a collaborative in the moment. And I like to do these things kind of in the moment collaboration, go down a rabbit hole, but it
Mhm.
always comes out pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's Alice in Wonderland. No, no, it's actually not bad. It's kind
That's
of cool to
me.
do that.
That's me, Alice in Wonderland, down the rabbit hole.
Well, it's kinda cool because it's like you don't know what's gonna be there. It's like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with
We
that?
Well, and then so, like, going back to the creative thing, we just created.
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way I like to flow. It's like a flow state's my thing, and that's where it hits because then it feels like you're getting a real story, the real deal,
Mhm.
and it's you're not, like, pulling teeth, like I
Exactly.
just yeah, it's like you're talking, it's like, "Oh, are we done?"
Well, what do you do?
Like,
What's your favorite color?
yeah, it's like the weather. It's like, "How was the weather?" It's like, "Okay." Yeah, okay, that's as far as we're gonna go today? That's how
Oh my god.
yeah, but you're a true visionary and trailblazer. I'm really happy that, you've been on the show today. We do have your confusedgirlinthecity.com/pre-order my book now. That will be fully clickable on any, the places that we are being, distributed to. We're just on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. In the description of our podcast, you'll be able to click on that, go right through it. So that's where you can get the book. And I want to thank you again for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such a way to, like, go into my evening. Now I'm gonna go on, like, a nice little walk.
Well, that's good. That's a good
Yeah,
thing too.
like a nice little evening walk.
Cool. I
So
do appreciate it. Thank you
thank
again for being on the
you.
show.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening.